You made your choice. Now live with it.
The kitchen clock ticked like a time bomb, each second reminding me how alone I was in my own house. Thursday night, 9:30 p.m. And here I sat with a lukewarm beer and the remote control. Living the American dream, folks. My wife Elena was at her business retreat in downtown Chicago, probably sipping champagne and discussing color palettes with other creative types. Or so she told me. I'm Cal McIntyre, 42 years old, owner of a dive bar called Murphy's that's seen better decades, and apparently married to a woman who thinks I'm about as exciting as watching paint dry. Can't say I blame her entirely. When you spend your days fixing broken taps and listening to construction workers complain about their wives, you don't exactly develop sparkling dinner conversation. The house felt different without Elena's constant energy. She was always moving, always planning, always talking about her next big project at the design agency. Our suburban home in Cedar Rapids looked like something from a magazine. All her doing, of course. White walls, modern furniture, everything perfectly arranged. I was just the guy who paid half the mortgage and tried not to leave beer rings on the glass coffee table. My phone buzzed. A text from Elena. Hotel Wi-Fi terrible. Love you. Don't wait up. Irrational. Short and sweet. Just short and sweet. Just like our conversations had become over the past year. I was reaching for another beer when my phone rang. Sophie, our 20-year-old daughter, calling from the University of Iowa. Hey, kiddo. Shouldn't you be studying or partying or whatever college kids do on Thursday nights? Dad, I'm worried about Mom. Sophie's voice carried that serious tone she'd developed lately, like she was trying to sound older than her years. She's been acting weird. Weird how? I settled back into my recliner, the only piece of furniture in the house that was purely mine. I called her yesterday about Thanksgiving plans, and she seemed, distracted, like she was hiding something. And when I asked about you, she changed the subject really fast. Kids notice everything, especially when parents think they're being subtle. Your mom's got a lot on her plate at work. This retreat is important for her career. Dad, come on. You can't tell me things are okay between you two. Even when I was home last month, you guys barely talked to each other. Sophie had her mother's directness, but thankfully inherited my BS detector. I couldn't lie to her, but I wasn't ready to admit that my marriage felt like a business arrangement that had lost its profitability. We're working through some things, I said, which was technically true if you counted living like polite roommates as working through things. Just be careful, okay? I love you both, but I love you more. After Sophie hung up, I sat in the silence, thinking about her words. Kids aren't supposed to pick sides, but maybe sometimes they see things clearer than the adults stumbling around in the dark. I walked upstairs to our bedroom, Elena's perfume still lingering in the air like an accusation. Her closet was open, and something caught my eye. The suitcase she'd packed was small, too small for a 3-day business retreat, but her makeup bag was gone, the expensive one she only used for special occasions. And, unless I was mistaken, her black lace lingerie set had vanished too. Funny thing about business retreats, they don't usually require Victoria's Secret. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Gina Trellis, Elena's work friend and the biggest gossip in the Tri-County area. The message was clearly meant for someone else. OMG, look at this party. Everyone's having such a blast at the Marriott. Attached was a selfie of Gina with a group of people in what looked like a hotel bar. And there, in the background, was my wife Elena, laughing at something a tall, dark-haired man was whispering in her ear. His hand was on her lower back, and she was leaning into him like they were sharing secrets. I stared at the photo for a long time, zooming in on Elena's face. She looked happy, genuinely happy, in a way I hadn't seen in months. The man was handsome in that polished, expensive way that screamed, I drive a BMW and have strong opinions about wine. Everything I wasn't. The smart thing would have been to call Elena, ask her about the photo, give her a chance to explain. But 22 years of marriage had taught me that sometimes you already know the answer before you ask the question. Instead, I called Vern Patterson, my old friend, and the closest thing Murphy's Bar had to a regular customer. Vern was an ex-cop who'd retired early after a knee injury and spent most evenings at my bar solving the world's problems one beer at a time. Cal, it's almost 10 o'clock. What's wrong? Meet me at the bar. I need a drink and some advice, in that order. On my way. 20 minutes later, I was pouring whiskey while Vern studied Gina's photo on my phone like it was evidence in a homicide case. Well, crap, he said finally. That doesn't look like a business retreat to me. You think I'm overreacting? Maybe it's innocent. Princess Vern gave me the look he probably used on suspects who claimed they were just holding the pills for a friend. Cal, I've seen you fix everything from broken toilets to broken hearts in this bar. But you can't fix stupid. And it would be stupid to pretend this photo doesn't mean exactly what you think it means. I poured myself a double. So what do I do? Depends. You want to save your marriage or save your dignity? Right now, I'm not sure there's a difference. Vern leaned back in his bar stool, studying me with those cop eyes that missed nothing. You know what your problem is, Cal? You're too nice. You've been so busy being the understanding husband that you forgot to be the kind of man a woman doesn't want to cheat on. Thanks for the pep talk, coach. I'm serious. When's the last time you surprised her? When's the last time you made her wonder what you were up to? I thought about it. Honestly, I couldn't remember. Our marriage had become a series of routines. Work, dinner, television, sleep, repeat. We were like two actors who'd been performing the same play for so long that we'd forgotten why we'd wanted to be on stage in the first place. So, what are you suggesting? Rempel grinned, and for a moment I saw the cop he used to be, the one who enjoyed catching bad guys in the act. I'm suggesting we find out exactly what kind of business your wife is conducting at that retreat. Millions morning came too early and too bright. I'd barely slept, my mind churning through scenarios ranging from innocent explanations to divorce attorneys. Elena had texted again around midnight, another short message about the conference schedule and how tired she was. No mention of the hotel bar or the handsome stranger with his hand on her back. I opened Murphy's Bar at 11, going through the motions of checking inventory and cleaning glasses, while my phone sat on the bar like a loaded tool. Vern arrived at noon with coffee and a plan. I did some research on your wife's company retreat, he said, sliding a printed page across the bar. The Midwest Creative Directors Conference. 3 days of workshops, networking events, and award ceremonies. Millions. Sounds legitimate. But here's the interesting part. The conference is at the convention center downtown, not the Marriott. The Marriott is where the after-parties are happening. Relinquimbled. I studied the schedule. Panel discussions, keynote speakers, vendor booths. All the boring stuff Elena would normally complain about. But the evening events were listed as networking receptions at various downtown hotels. So she could be legitimately attending the conference and legitimately partying at the Marriott. Sure, the question is who she's partying with and why she didn't mention it to you. My phone rang. Elena's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail. Instead, I answered on the third ring. Hey, honey, how's the conference? Oh, you know how these things are. Lots of talking about synergy and brand alignment. I'm learning a lot, though. Her voice sounded normal, maybe a little rushed. How are things at the bar? Same as always. Vern's here keeping me company. Tell him I said hi. Listen, I have to run to another session. I'll call you tonight, okay? Wait. I was thinking maybe I could drive down tomorrow, take you to dinner after your conference ends. We could make a weekend of it. Silent the connection. In the background, I could hear voices and what sounded like hotel lobby music. That's sweet, Cal, but I'm really tired after these long days. I just want to come home Sunday and relax. Rain check? After she hung up, Vern raised an eyebrow. She didn't sound thrilled about your romantic gesture. No, she didn't. So, what's the plan? I looked around Murphy's Bar, the worn wooden floors, the mismatched stools. the neon beer signs that had been flickering since the Clinton administration. This place was mine, the one thing in my life that made sense. But sitting here feeling sorry for myself wasn't going to answer the questions eating at my gut. We're going to Chicago. The drive to downtown Chicago took 3 hours, giving me plenty of time to question my sanity. What was I planning to do? Hide behind potted plants like some jealous teenager? Confront Elena in the middle of a hotel lobby? The rational part of my brain kept suggesting I turn around and go home. But the rational part of my brain hadn't seen that photo. Vern had borrowed his nephew's Honda Civic for the surveillance mission, reasoning that my pickup truck was too recognizable. We parked across from the Marriott at 4 o'clock, with a clear view of the main entrance and valet stand. This is either the stupidest thing I've ever done or the smartest, I said, adjusting the rearview mirror to watch the hotel entrance. Probably both, Vern replied, unwrapping a sandwich. But at least you'll know for sure. We didn't have to wait long. At 5:30, Elena emerged from the hotel wearing a blue dress I'd never seen before, something that probably cost more than most people's rent. She looked beautiful, confident, and completely unlike the tired conference attendees she'd described on the phone. She wasn't alone. The man from Gina's photo walked beside her, his hand resting casually on her lower back as they approached the valet stand. He was tall, well-dressed, and moved with the kind of easy confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. When he handed his ticket to the valet, I caught a glimpse of an expensive watch and a wedding ring. Well, there's your answer, Vern said quietly. A black BMW pulled up and the man, let's call him Mr. BMW, opened the passenger door for Elena like they'd done this 100 times before. She slid into the seat with practiced ease, and he walked around to the driver's side with a satisfied smile. I started the Honda. We're following them. Cal, think about this. You see them together, then what? You going to confront them at dinner? Make a scene in some fancy restaurant? I don't know yet, but I'm not driving home without knowing who this guy is. The BMW headed north on Michigan Avenue, and then going first with a chapters for money. The BMW headed north on 5-sectioned elevation, at the man keeps some north time. I didn't click that. The BMW head following to them, but I repped it the doors of carved in school. Fern's only that headed north on Michigan Avenue, and I followed at a distance, grateful for Chicago traffic that made it easy to blend in. They stopped at a upscale Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park, the kind of place with valet parking and a wine list longer than most novels. Through the restaurant's front windows, I watched Elena and Mr. BMW being seated at a corner table. They ordered wine, leaned close together, and talked with the intensity of people sharing secrets. When Elena laughed at something he said, she reached across the table and touched his hand. 22 years of marriage, and I couldn't remember the last time she'd looked at me like that. I need to know who he is, I said. Vern was already pulling out his phone. License plate number? I gave him the BMW's plate, and he made a call to someone he knew at the DMV. 10 minutes later, we had a name. Jack Prentice, age 36, address in Lincoln Park. Another phone call to a different contact, and we had more details. Successful real estate developer. Divorced, no kids, member of several exclusive clubs. Guy's got money, Vern observed. Probably makes your wife feel like a big shot. We sat in the Honda for 2 hours, watching Elena and Jack through the restaurant window like we were conducting a nature documentary on suburban infidelity. They ordered dessert, shared it with intimate smiles, and when Jack paid the check, Elena leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. My hands were shaking when they came out of the restaurant. The BMW headed back toward downtown, and I followed, my mind racing through possibilities. Maybe they were going back to the hotel. Maybe they were calling it a night. Maybe Elena would remember she had a husband and a daughter and 22 years of marriage worth saving. Instead, they went to Jack's apartment building, a converted warehouse in River North with the kind of industrial chic architecture that screamed expensive. The BMW disappeared into an underground garage, and Elena disappeared with it. I parked across the street and stared up at the building's windows. wondering which one belonged to Jack Prentice and what was happening behind it. "We should go," Vern said after an hour. "You've seen enough." Right. I'd seen my wife of 22 years walk into another man's apartment building like she belonged there. I'd seen her laugh and touch his hand and kiss his cheek with an intimacy that should have been mine. I'd seen enough to know that my marriage wasn't just in trouble. It was over. But I wasn't ready to go home and pretend everything was normal. "I want to leave him a message," I said. "Cal, don't do anything stupid." I got out of the Honda and walked to the parking garage entrance. The BMW was parked in a visitor spot, gleaming under the fluorescent lights like it was posing for a magazine ad. I pulled out my pocket knife and considered my options. Slashing tires would be too obvious, too destructive. I wanted something more subtle, something that would let Jack Prentice know he'd been noticed without giving him grounds to call the police. Instead, I used the knife to scratch a message into the dust on his windshield. "Hope she's worth the ride." Then I walked back to the Honda where Vern was shaking his head. "Feel better?" "Not yet," I said, "but I will." Fleming. As we drove back toward Cedar Rapids, my phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Long day at the conference. Heading to bed early. Love you." I didn't text back. Saturday morning brought rain and a hangover I hadn't earned through drinking. I'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene outside Jack Prentice's apartment building, and wondering how long Elena's business retreat had been going on. Murphy's Bar was closed on weekends, which left me alone in the house with too much time to think. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and tried to figure out what came next. Confronting Elena seemed obvious, but something Vern had said kept echoing in my head. "You've been so busy being the understanding husband that you forgot to be the kind of man a woman doesn't want to cheat on." Maybe it was time to stop being understanding. My phone rang at 10 o'clock. Elena's name on the screen made my stomach clench, but I answered with what I hoped sounded like normal Saturday morning casualness. "Morning, beautiful. How's the conference?" "Good morning, honey. It's been really educational. I'm learning so much about emerging trends in commercial design." She sounded bright, energetic, nothing like someone who'd spent the night at another man's apartment. "I should be home tomorrow afternoon around 3. Looking forward to it. Hey, Sophie called yesterday. She's worried about you." "Worried about me? Why?" "She thinks you've been acting strange lately. Distracted." A pause. In the background, I could hear what sounded like a hotel room. Running water, the muffled sound of a television. "I've had a lot on my mind with work. This conference is really important for my career, Cal. I hope you understand." "Of course I understand. I've always supported your career." "I know you have. I just have to come man. I've strained you it and posted on the stat with me. I have only stayed at all. I know you have. You're a good husband." Like a slap. A good husband. Patient, understanding, predictable. The kind of man who would never suspect his wife of cheating, and if he did suspect, would be too polite to do anything about it. After Elena hung up, I sat in the silence of our perfect suburban kitchen and made a decision. If my wife wanted to play games, I could learn the rules. I called Gina Trellis. Elena's work friend answered on the second ring, her voice carrying that fake enthusiasm she used when she didn't recognize the number. "Gina, it's Cal McIntyre, Elena's husband." "Oh, Cal, hi, how are you?" "I'm good. Listen, I wanted to thank you for sending that photo yesterday from the conference party. Elena looked like she was having a great time." Silence. Then, "Photo? I'm sorry, I don't—" "The selfie from the Marriott bar. You sent it to me by mistake, I think." Elena was in the background with some of her colleagues. More silence. Gina was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. She knew exactly what photo I was talking about, and she was calculating how much trouble she might be in. "Oh, that photo. Yes, everyone's been having such a wonderful time networking. The conference has been really valuable." "I'm sure it has. The man Elena was talking to in the photo. Do you know him?" "He looked familiar." "I'm not sure who you mean. There were so many people there." "Tall guy, dark hair, expensive suit." He seemed to know Elena pretty well. Mess's voice got smaller. Cal, I think you should talk to Elena about this. I plan to, but since you were there, I thought you might have some insight. As Elena's friend. The word friend carried just enough edge to make my point. Gina had two choices: help me, or risk becoming collateral damage in whatever was about to happen to my marriage. His name is Jack Prentice, she said finally. He's a real estate developer. He's been working with our agency on some high-end residential projects. That explains it. Business relationship. Yes, exactly. Business. But her voice said otherwise. Gina knew exactly what kind of business Elena and Jack were conducting, and she knew I knew it too. After I hung up, I made another call, this time to Elena's office. The agency was closed on weekends, but I knew Elena's assistant sometimes worked Saturdays to catch up on administrative tasks. Hi, Jennifer. It's Cal McIntyre. Is Elena in today? Oh, hi, Mr. McIntyre. No, Elena's at the conference in Chicago through Sunday. Did you need me to get a message to her? Actually, I was hoping you could help me with something. Elena mentioned she's been working on some projects with a developer named Jack Prentice. I'm thinking of having some work done on the bar, and she suggested I might want to talk to him. Jack Prentice? I don't think... Let me check her project files. I waited, listening to the sound of filing cabinets opening and papers rustling. I'm not seeing any active projects with that name. Are you sure she said Prentice? Maybe I misunderstood. Thanks anyway, Jennifer. So Elena and Jack weren't working together professionally, which meant their relationship was exactly what it looked like in that restaurant window. Personal, intimate, and secret. The rest of Saturday crawled by like a wounded animal. I cleaned the house, did laundry, and tried to watch television, but everything felt surreal, like I was playing the role of a normal husband, while my real life happened somewhere else. Every few hours, Elena would send a text, updates about conference sessions, complaints about hotel food, casual expressions of love that felt like lies. I didn't respond to any of them. Sunday morning brought sunshine and a plan. Elena would be home at 3 o'clock, and I would be ready for her. Not with accusations or confrontations, but with questions. Calm, reasonable questions that would give her every opportunity to tell me the truth. I was vacuuming the living room when my phone rang. Unknown Chicago number. Is this Cal McIntyre? The voice was male, confident, with the kind of smooth delivery that comes from years of closing deals. Who's asking? Jack Prentice. I think we need to talk. My hand tightened on the phone. Do we? I found your little message on my car yesterday. Very mature. I thought you'd appreciate the personal touch. Look, McIntyre, I don't know what you think you saw, but I saw my wife having dinner with you and then going to your apartment. What exactly am I supposed to think? A pause. When Jack spoke again, his voice had lost some of its smoothness. Elena told me you two were having problems. She said you were basically living separate lives. Elena says a lot of things. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What am I going to do? I'm going to continue seeing her, because she makes me happy and I make her happy. Something you apparently stopped doing a long time ago. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. This stranger, this Jack Prentice, was talking about my wife like she was a commodity he'd acquired. Discussing my marriage like it was a business transaction that had gone bad. You think you know Elena? I said. You think a few months of hotel rooms and fancy dinners means you understand who she is? I know she deserves better than a small-town bar owner who gave up on life. I know she's brilliant and beautiful and wasted on someone who can't appreciate what he has. He charged, I corrected. Past tense. What's that supposed to mean? It means you can have her, Jack. Congratulations. But don't think for a second that this ends here. I hung up before he could respond. Elena arrived home at 3:15, pulling into our driveway with a satisfied smile and a small suitcase that had apparently been sufficient for her 3-day business retreat. She looked refreshed, glowing, like someone who'd just returned from a vacation, rather than a series of professional development sessions. Hey, honey, she said, kissing my cheek with lips that had probably kissed Jack Prentice goodbye an hour earlier. I missed you. Did you? So my tone made her pause. She studied my face with the wariness of someone who sensed trouble but couldn't identify its source. Of course I did. The conference was interesting, but I'm glad to be home. Tell me about it. The conference. We were standing in our kitchen, the afternoon sun streaming through windows that Elena had chosen, illuminating the life we'd built together over 22 years. A life that now felt like a stage set waiting to be struck. Well, there were sessions on sustainable design, emerging technologies, client relationship management. She rattled off a list of topics that sounded appropriately boring and professional. Sounds educational. What about the networking events? Meet anyone interesting? Matthias flickered, just for a moment, but I caught it. The usual crowd, other designers, some vendors, a few potential clients. Anyone I might know? Don't think so. Why all the questions? Alex, I pulled out my phone and showed her Gina's photo. Elena's face went white, then red, then settled into a mask of careful neutrality. Where did you get this? Gina sent it by mistake. Nice dress, by the way. I don't remember seeing it before. Elena sat down at the kitchen table, her hands folded in front of her like a defendant preparing for cross-examination. Cal, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You always were good with words. It's not what you think. What I think is that you've been having an affair with Jack Prentice. What I think is that your business retreat was actually a romantic getaway. What I think is that my wife has been lying to me for months. Tears started forming in Elena's eyes. Whether from guilt, fear, or anger, I couldn't tell. Maybe all three. Cal, please, let me explain what happened. Go ahead. I'm listening. And for the first time in months, I really was. Elena sat at our kitchen table, tears streaming down her face, and told me a story I'd heard 1,000 times in movies and books, but never imagined would happen in my own house. It was the classic tale of a marriage that had grown stale, a woman who felt unappreciated and invisible, and a charming stranger who made her feel alive again. It started innocently, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack hired our agency to design the interiors for a luxury condo development. We had several meetings and he was so attentive. He listened to my ideas, respected my opinions, made me feel like I was brilliant instead of just another suburban housewife. You're not a housewife. You're a housewife. You're a successful creative director. But I didn't feel successful. I felt like I was going through the motions, coming home to a husband who barely looked up from the television when I walked in the door. The accusation stung because it was partially true. Somewhere along the way, Elena and I had stopped seeing each other as people and started seeing each other as fixtures, reliable, predictable, and easy to ignore. So you decided to have an affair. I didn't decide anything. It just happened. One meeting led to another, then to drinks, then to dinner. He made me laugh, Cal. When's the last time you made me laugh? I couldn't remember, which was answer enough. How long? I asked. 3 months. 3 months of lies, 3 months of secret phone calls and mysterious late nights at the office. 3 months of coming home to me with Jack Prentice still on her skin. Do you love him? Emma looked out the kitchen window at our backyard, where we'd hosted barbecues and birthday parties, and all the ordinary celebrations of a long marriage. I don't know. Maybe. I love how I feel when I'm with him. And how do you feel when you're with me? She turned back to me, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd married 22 years ago. Young, hopeful, full of dreams we'd somehow forgotten to pursue. Tired, she said. I feel tired. The honesty was brutal and perfect. No dramatic declarations, no soap opera histrionics, just the simple truth that our marriage had become an exhausting routine neither of us enjoyed. So what happens now? I asked. I don't know. I never meant for you to find out like this. I thought maybe I could figure things out, decide what I really wanted, while keeping me as your backup plan. That's not fair. Fair? I stood up, pacing to the window and back. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me you were unhappy before you started screwing some real estate developer. Fair would have been giving me a chance to fix things before you decided our marriage was over. I didn't decide our marriage was over. No, you just decided to start a new one while keeping the old one running in the background. Very efficient. Elena's had stopped, replaced by the defensive anger of someone who knew they were wrong but wasn't ready to admit it. You're acting like I'm some kind of monster. I made a mistake, Cal. I got lonely and confused, and I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. This is a choice. You chose Jack Prentice over your husband and daughter. Don't bring Sophie into this. Sophie's already in this. She called me Thursday night, worried about you. She could sense something was wrong even from 200 miles away. Kids always know. Elena's face crumpled. Whatever else she'd convinced herself about her affair, she couldn't rationalize hurting our daughter. I never wanted to hurt anyone. But you did. You hurt me, you hurt Sophie, and you hurt yourself. And for what? Some fantasy about being young and exciting again? You don't understand. Then help me understand. Explain to me how 22 years of marriage means less than 3 months with a stranger. Elena stood up, her designer clothes and perfect makeup, making her look like a stranger in our working-class kitchen. Because Jack sees me, Cal. When he looks at me, he sees someone worth pursuing, someone worth impressing. When you look at me, you see the woman who's supposed to be there when you get home. Hit their target. Elena was right. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped seeing her as a person and started seeing her as a role. Wife, mother, business partner in the enterprise of our shared life. I'd taken her for granted in ways I was only beginning to understand. So what do you want? I asked. You want me to fight for you? You want me to compete with Jack Prentice for my own wife? I want you to care enough to try. Challenge hung in the air between us like smoke. Elena was asking me to become someone I'd never been. Jealous, possessive, dramatic. She wanted passion from a man who'd spent 22 years being steady and reliable. And if I don't, then I guess we'll know where we stand. That night, Elena slept in the guest bedroom while I lay awake in our king-size bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out who I was supposed to be. The understanding husband who forgave and forgot. The outraged victim who demanded justice. The romantic hero who won his wife back through grand gestures. None of those roles felt like me. Monday morning, Elena left for work with a kiss on my cheek and a promise that we'd talk more that evening. She was giving me time to process, time to decide how I wanted to handle her betrayal. Very considerate of her. I opened Murphy's bar at 11 and called Vern. How'd it go? He asked, settling onto his usual bar stool. About how you'd expect. She's in love with the idea of being in love, and I'm supposed to compete for the privilege of keeping her. And are you going to compete? I poured myself a beer even though it wasn't noon yet. I'm going to do something. I'm just not sure what. Smirk studied me with those ex-cop eyes. You want my advice? That's why I called you. Dismissing stop trying to save your marriage and start trying to save yourself. Elena made her choice 3 months ago. Now you need to make yours. Which is, unsure, fight back. Not for her, for you. Show her and everyone else that Cal McIntyre isn't the kind of man you walk over. I'm not the revenge type, Vern. Maybe it's time to learn. That afternoon, I drove to Elena's office. The design agency occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and modern furniture. The kind of place that looked like it was trying very hard to be creative. Elena's assistant Jennifer greeted me with surprise and a little nervousness. Mr. McIntyre, Elena didn't mention you were coming by. I wanted to surprise her. Is she in? She's in a client meeting, but it should be wrapping up soon. Would you like to wait? I settled into the reception area and watched Elena's world through new eyes. Her colleagues moved with the urgent energy of people who believed their work mattered. Young designers huddled over computers. Older executives strode purposefully between offices, and everyone seemed to speak in the same vocabulary of brands and demographics and market positioning. This was the world where Elena felt important, where Jack Prentice had found her and convinced her she deserved better than a small-town bar owner. Cal? Elena appeared in the reception area, looking surprised and not entirely pleased to see me. What are you doing here? I wanted to take you to lunch. We need to talk. She glanced around the office, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of personal drama in her professional space. I'm really busy today. Can we talk tonight? No, Elena. We can't wait until tonight. We need to talk now. Something in my tone, or maybe just the fact that I was refusing to be put off, made her reconsider. Okay, let me get my purse. We went to a coffee shop around the corner, the kind of place where Elena probably brought clients to discuss color schemes and budget overruns. She ordered a complicated latte while I stuck with black coffee, and we sat at a small table by the window like we were on a first date that wasn't going well. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, I began, about wanting me to care enough to try. This face brightened slightly. And? I do care, Elena. I care enough to tell you the truth instead of playing games. Her expression shifted, wariness replacing hope. The truth is, our marriage has been over for a long time. We've both been going through the motions, pretending everything was fine because it was easier than admitting we'd grown apart. Cal, let me finish. The truth is, you're right about Jack Prentice. He probably does see you in ways I stopped seeing you. He probably does make you feel special and appreciated, and all the things a husband should make his wife feel. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't interrupt. But the truth is also that you're a coward, Elena. Instead of talking to me about our problems, you decided to solve them by finding someone else. Instead of fighting for our marriage, you started shopping for a replacement. That's not what I did. That's exactly what you did. And now you want me to compete for you like you're some kind of prize. You want me to prove I'm worth keeping. Relinquack in my chair, studying the woman I'd been married to for 22 years. She was beautiful, successful, and sitting across from me like a stranger. Here's the thing, Elena. I'm not going to compete with Jack Prentice. I'm not going to fight for someone who doesn't want to be kept. I'm going to make this easy for you. What do you mean? I mean, you can have him. You can have your exciting new life with your exciting new man. But you can't have both. You can't keep me as your safety net while you figure out if the grass is greener. Ellen stared at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. You're giving me an ultimatum? I'm giving you what you wanted, a choice. Him or me. But you have to choose now, and you have to live with the consequences. I choose you, then you end it with Jack today. You call him right now, in front of me, and tell him it's over. No gradual transition, no staying friends, no keeping in touch for business reasons. You choose our marriage and you fight for it like your life depends on it. And if I choose him, prescribed my coffee and stood up, then I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are.